But here's what most people don't realize. Are you waking up tired, feeling weaker, and quietly noticing changes in your body you never expected? Not just energy, but presence, confidence, circulation. I hear this from men every day. I'm a board-certified urologist, and for decades I've helped men over 50 reclaim strength, function, and self-trust. There's one simple compound most men misunderstand completely. Use the wrong way, it does nothing. Use correctly, it changes everything. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this matters to you, like and subscribe. But here's what most people don't realize. The changes you're noticing didn't happen overnight, and they're not happening because you failed, aged poorly, or somehow lost something as a man. I hear this quiet concern all the time. Men tell me they feel less firm, less full, less present in their own bodies. Not just physically, but in how they carry themselves. They stand a little differently. They hesitate where they never used to. And what hurts most is that no one ever explained why this happens, so men are left to fill in the blanks with fear or self-blame. What I want you to understand is this. What many men call shrinking has far less to do with masculinity and far more to do with circulation and metabolism. This isn't about vanity, it's about blood flow, oxygen delivery, hydration at the cellular level, and how efficiently your body adapts as it ages. When those systems slow down, the body doesn't fail, it compensates. And those compensations show up in ways that feel deeply personal. As we get older, the internal chemistry of the body subtly shifts. One of the most overlooked changes is something called acid-base balance. In simple terms, your body is constantly working to keep your blood and tissues in a very narrow pH range. When you're younger, this system is resilient. You bounce back quickly. But with age, stress, poor sleep, medications, and years of modern diet patterns, many men drift into what we call low-grade metabolic acidosis. That sounds dramatic, but it's usually quiet. You don't feel it directly. You feel its effects. When the internal environment becomes slightly more acidic over time, blood vessels don't relax as easily. Oxygen doesn't move into tissues as efficiently. Cells hold on to less water. Muscles feel flatter. Tissues feel less responsive. Circulation becomes more sluggish, especially in areas that rely heavily on vascular health. And the body, always prioritizing survival, redirects resources toward vital organs first. That's not a flaw. That's biology doing its job. But here's where the frustration comes in. Men notice these changes in private moments. They compare how they feel now to how they felt 10 or 20 years ago, and they don't talk about it. They assume it's just aging, or worse, that it's irreversible. I've sat across from countless men who lower their voice when they describe this, even in a medical office. There's a quiet grief there, a sense of losing ground without understanding the rules of the game. I want to say this clearly because it matters. You are not broken. Your body is adapting to an internal environment that has slowly shifted over time. Reduced circulation doesn't mean reduced worth. Changes in fullness don't mean diminished masculinity. They mean the systems that support blood flow, oxygenation, and tissue hydration are under strain. And systems can be supported. When circulation is strong, tissues are well oxygenated and properly hydrated, the body expresses itself differently. There's firmness, there's responsiveness, there's presence, not because of ego, but because physiology is working with you instead of against you. When circulation is compromised, the opposite happens, and men feel it long before any lab test flags a problem. This is why quick fixes and surface-level solutions disappoint so many men. They don't address the internal environment. They don't correct the chemistry that allows blood vessels to open, oxygen to deliver efficiently, and tissues to maintain their structure. And without that foundation, nothing truly changes in a lasting way. What gives me hope, and what I've seen again and again in my practice, is that these shifts are not one-way streets. Even in your 50s, 60s and beyond, the body remains responsive when you give it the right signals. Small changes at the metabolic level can produce noticeable changes in how the body feels, looks, and functions. And this is where bicarbonate quietly enters the picture, but not in the way most men think. But here's what most people don't realize. Bicarbonate isn't some trendy hack or internet discovery. Your body has been making and using it since the day you were born. Long before supplements, before social media, before any of the noise, bicarbonate was quietly doing one of the most important jobs in human physiology, keeping your internal environment stable enough for life to function well. The problem isn't that bicarbonate doesn't work. The problem is that most men don't understand what it actually does. So they expect the wrong outcome or use it the wrong way. At its core, bicarbonate is a buffering system. Think of it as your body's natural shock absorber. Every day, normal metabolism produces acids. Exercise produces acids. Stress produces acids. Aging itself shifts the balance slightly toward acidity. Bicarbonate's role is to neutralize excess acid, so your blood and tissues stay in a range where enzymes work efficiently, blood vessels relax properly, and oxygen can be delivered where it's needed. This isn't alternative medicine. This is basic physiology taught in every medical school. When bicarbonate levels are adequate and properly regulated, muscles contract and relax more efficiently. Blood vessels respond more smoothly to signals that tell them to open. Oxygen moves from the bloodstream into tissues with less resistance. And something most men don't realize is that nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for healthy vascular expansion, functions better in a balanced internal environment. When the body drifts too acidic over time, nitric oxide signaling becomes less effective. Blood flow suffers quietly, gradually, and predictably. Now let's connect this back to what men actually notice. Improved blood flow doesn't just mean better endurance or less fatigue. It changes how tissues feel and respond. Areas of the body that rely heavily on vascular filling and oxygen delivery become more responsive when circulation improves. That's where men start noticing differences in firmness, fullness, and overall presence. Not because something was added, but because what was already there is finally being supplied properly again. This is where internet myths tend to go off the rails. Some sources frame bicarbonate as a miracle compound or a shortcut. Others dismiss it entirely as useless. The truth, as usual, lives in the middle. Bicarbonate doesn't override biology. It supports it. It doesn't force change. It creates an environment where the body can do what it's designed to do more efficiently. Safety and intent matter here. Bicarbonate isn't about excess. More is not better. The body is always aiming for balance, not extremes. When used thoughtfully, in appropriate amounts, and with an understanding of timing and context, bicarbonate can gently support pH balance. When misused, it can stress digestion, disrupt electrolytes, and create false expectations. That's why moderation isn't just a warning, it's the entire point. In my practice, I've seen men who felt flatter, weaker, and less responsive begin to notice subtle but meaningful changes when their internal environment improved. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. Energy feels more stable, muscles feel more efficient, circulation feels more reliable. And with that comes a quiet restoration of confidence, because the body starts responding again instead of resisting. I want to be very clear here. This isn't hype. There's nothing mystical happening. When blood flows more freely, tissues hydrate better. When tissues hydrate better, they function better. When function improves, perception changes. Men often describe it as feeling more like themselves again. That's not psychology. That's physiology expressing itself properly. The danger lies in misunderstanding the role bicarbonate plays. If you expect it to act like a stimulant, you'll be disappointed. If you treat it like a one-time fix, you'll miss the benefit. It works best as part of a broader respect for how the body regulates itself, especially as we age. Supporting the buffering system is about removing friction, not forcing outcomes. And this is where I see most men get tripped up. They hear just enough to try something, but not enough to do it correctly. They ignore context. They ignore timing. They ignore the body's signals. And then they conclude it doesn't work. But here's where most men make a critical mistake, and it cancels out the benefit entirely. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not that bicarbonate doesn't work for most men. It's that they approach it with the wrong mindset, the wrong timing, and the wrong expectations. I see this all the time. A man reads one comment online, tries it once or twice, feels uncomfortable, or notices nothing dramatic and decides it's useless. What he never realizes is that the way he used it actually worked against his body instead of supporting it. One of the biggest mistakes is the belief that more is better. This comes from a very human place. When something feels important, men tend to push harder, but bicarbonate doesn't respond well to force. It's not a stimulant, it's not a hormone, it's a buffer. Its role is subtle, regulatory, and context dependent. When you overwhelm the system, the body doesn't thank you. It pushes back. I've watched men create unnecessary digestive stress by taking too much at once or taking it on an empty stomach without understanding how their body responds. Bloating, discomfort, reflux, and irregular bowel habits are common when bicarbonate is misused. Then there's the sodium load, which many men ignore completely. Sodium isn't the enemy, but excess sodium without awareness can strain blood pressure regulation and fluid balance, especially in men who are already sensitive. When that happens, the very circulation you're trying to support becomes less stable. Timing is another place where men quietly sabotage themselves. The body's buffering needs change throughout the day. Metabolism isn't static, neither is digestion, neither is sleep. Using bicarbonate at the wrong time can interfere with digestion or disrupt the body's natural nighttime chemistry, and when sleep suffers, everything else follows. Testosterone signaling weakens, recovery slows, circulation becomes less responsive. Men don't always connect the dots, but the body always does. The right way to think about bicarbonate is not as an intervention, but as support. It's there to gently assist the body's own buffering system, not replace it. When used with awareness, it can reduce friction inside the system. Muscles feel less heavy, energy feels more even, circulation feels less strained. These changes are often subtle at first, which is why men looking for dramatic sensations think nothing is happening. Metabolic context matters more than most people realize. A man who's chronically stressed, underslept, and inflamed will respond differently than a man who's already supporting his recovery. That doesn't mean one can't benefit. It means expectations must match physiology. Bicarbonate works best when it's part of a bigger picture that includes hydration, breathing, sleep rhythm, and reasonable nutrition. Strip it out of context, and it loses its power. I often tell my patients that the goal isn't to feel something immediately. The goal is to notice what stops feeling difficult over time, waking up with steadier energy, less stiffness, better responsiveness, a sense that the body isn't fighting itself anymore. Those are signs the internal environment is improving. And they don't come from extremes, they come from consistency and respect for how the body adapts. What breaks my heart a little is how quickly men give up on themselves when something doesn't deliver instant results. I see men try this after reading one comment online and then give up too soon. They assume their body is beyond help, when in reality it was just asking for a different approach. Aging bodies don't need aggression, they need cooperation. When bicarbonate is treated as a supportive tool instead of a miracle, it fits where it belongs. It becomes part of a quiet recalibration. The body breathes easier, circulation improves gradually, sleep deepens instead of being disrupted, and from that foundation, other improvements begin to stack. Now let me show you why the real change men notice isn't just physical, it's how they feel waking up. But here's what most people don't realize. The size change men talk about rarely announces itself the way they expect. It doesn't show up first as something you measure or analyze. It shows up in how you move through the day, how you stand when you get out of bed, how your body feels when you walk into a room, how present you feel in your own skin. That's what real masculine vitality looks like, and it's why so many men miss it when it starts to return. When circulation improves, the body expresses confidence before the mind catches up. Shoulders sit a little higher, breathing feels deeper, movements feel more coordinated instead of heavy. This isn't psychological trickery, it's physiology. When tissues are better oxygenated and properly hydrated, muscles engage more efficiently. Posture improves because the body isn't conserving energy or guarding against fatigue. Presence returns because the nervous system feels safer and more supported. One of the most powerful connections here is sleep. Quality sleep isn't just rest, it's repair. During deep sleep, testosterone signaling becomes more efficient, blood vessels reset their responsiveness, and inflammatory stress comes down. When sleep improves even slightly, vascular health follows. And when vascular health improves, everything downstream benefits. Men often chase confidence directly, not realizing it's built quietly overnight through better circulation and hormonal balance. What fascinates me is how small physiological improvements compound over time. A little better sleep leads to steadier energy. Steadier energy leads to more movement. More movement improves circulation. Better circulation supports tissue health. And suddenly, men feel different without being able to point to one dramatic change. They just know something has shifted. The body feels more responsive, less muted, more alive. Men often notice these changes indirectly first. They wake up feeling clearer, they recover faster after activity, they feel less drained by the afternoon. Then later, they realize their confidence feels different. Not forced, not performative, natural. That's when they understand that vitality isn't about reclaiming youth, it's about restoring function. And function expresses itself in ways that feel deeply personal and affirming. I want to be very careful here to avoid fear-based messaging because fear shuts the body down. Decline is not a punishment, it's feedback. The body communicates through sensation, energy, and responsiveness. When you listen and support it properly, it responds with gratitude. Dignity isn't lost with age, it's refined. And men who approach their health with respect instead of panic tend to recover more than they expect. I've watched men rediscover a sense of presence they thought was gone forever, not because they chased an image, but because they supported the systems that make presence possible: blood flow, sleep, recovery, metabolic balance. When those align, the body stops feeling like something you're managing and starts feeling like something you inhabit again. This is why the idea of size needs to be redefined. It's not about comparison or numbers. It's about fullness of experience, strength of posture, ease of movement, confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Those qualities return quietly when the body is given the right environment. And if you're thinking, have I waited too long? This next part is for you. But here's what most people don't realize. It is not too late. Not at 50, not at 60, not even at 70. I need you to hear that clearly, because too many men quietly assume the window has closed. They think what they're feeling now is permanent, that decline is the price of time, and that adaptation only moves in one direction. That belief does more damage than aging itself. I've watched men your age reverse years of decline, not with extremes, not with punishment, and not with desperation, but with understanding. The male body is remarkably adaptable when it's given the right conditions. It doesn't need to be shocked into change. It needs to be supported. Small corrections made consistently can restore momentum in ways that surprise even the most skeptical men. One of the hardest things for men is accepting that strength doesn't always mean pushing harder. Sometimes it means listening more closely. Sometimes it means backing off just enough to let the body rebalance. That's not weakness. That's wisdom earned through experience. And when men allow themselves to approach health this way, without ego and without shame, progress becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. I want to speak directly to the part of you that may feel frustrated or disappointed. There is nothing wrong with wanting to feel strong, capable, and confident in your body. Those desires don't disappear with age because they're tied to identity, dignity, and presence. What changes is the strategy. The body no longer responds well to force, but it responds beautifully to alignment. Responsibility doesn't mean blame. Taking responsibility for your health isn't an admission of failure. It's an act of self-respect. It's saying, I matter enough to understand what my body needs now. And when men make that shift, something powerful happens. They stop chasing fixes and start building foundations. I've seen men regain energy they thought was gone forever. I've seen posture change, sleep deepen, and confidence return, and not loudly, but steadily. And the common thread is always the same. They stopped doing this alone. They stopped relying on guesswork. They allowed themselves to learn, adjust, and stay consistent. Health is not a solo project. Men do better when they feel informed, supported, and understood. That's why community matters. Not to compete, but to normalize the process. To remind you that others are walking the same path, asking the same questions, and rebuilding in their own time. And that's exactly where we go next. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to thank you. I know your time matters. And the fact that you're here tells me you care about your health, even if you haven't always had the right information or support. That matters more than any single supplement or strategy ever could. If you found this valuable, I invite you to join our community and subscribe so you never miss future guidance designed specifically for men like you. This channel exists for a simple reason. Men deserve honest, respectful conversations about their health without hype, shame, or pressure. You're not here to be sold something. You're here to understand your body and make better decisions for it. I want to close the loop we opened at the beginning. Bicarbonate is not a promise, and it's not a shortcut, it's a tool. When it's used correctly in the right context and with patience, it can support the systems that allow your body to function better. When it's misunderstood or rushed, it disappoints. The difference is not the compound, it's the approach. What I hope you take away from this is bigger than any one topic. You deserve energy. You deserve confidence. You deserve deep restorative sleep that allows your body to recover and respond the way it was designed to. None of that is asking too much. It's asking the right way. Take care of your health, not out of fear, but out of respect, because you are worth it. I'll see you in the next video.